Trying to get you guys the explanation of the Unit 1 test worked out. Sorry it's taken so long, but it ran into technical difficulty. This is me on my iPad, so please don't expect amazing things. But problem number 1, these two angles are on a straight line, so they add up to equal 180. So I actually add them up and set them equal to 180. Subtract 125 from both sides. That is supposed to be a 125 because 180 minus 125 is 55 degrees. Problem number 2, these are vertical angles, which mean they equal each other. So 1/3 x equals 60. The problem most of you made with this is that although you set that up, you divided both sides by 3 and got 20. Well, we're not dividing by 3 because we didn't multiply by 3. We're dividing by 1/3 because we multiplied by 1/3. So 60 divided by 1/3 is 180. If you don't remember your fraction rules, don't stress out. It is something your calculator can handle for you. These two angles are same side interior angles, which means they add up to equal 180 degrees. So 2x plus 8x plus 12 equals 180. Combine like terms, subtract your number, divide by 10. 16.8 was the answer you should have gotten there. These two angles are corresponding angles, which mean they equal each other. So you set them equal to each other. If you can see that before the x's, it was 3x minus 50 equals 2x minus 5. I subtracted 2x from both sides. I added 50 to both sides, and I got x equals 45. This is where you can start setting up a proportion. So we've got 12x over 9, because it's this side. 12 over 9 equals 16 over x. Cross multiply, divide by 12, you got x equals 12. This problem here, you can do the same thing except you didn't have this little piece. So to get it, we just took 14 minus 4 and we got 10. So now I can go 10 over 4 equals x over 6. And we got x equals 15 as the answer once we cross multiplied and solved for x. The problem people made with this, with number 7, is they forgot to put the 3x here. So they said 3x plus 4x equals 180. Well, all three angles have to add up to equal 180. And those two little marks right there tell us that this angle and that angle are the same. So it's 3x plus 4x equals 180. So x equals 18. Here people forgot about the 90. They added these two angles together and set them equal to 180, but you've got to add in that 90. So x plus 5 plus 2x minus 2 plus 90 equals 180. Combine like terms, solve for x, and x equals 29. Alright, so for this one, this is where in the day before I set a smiley face in this angle. And the reason I had done that is to prove or to over-exaggerate the fact that it does not matter what that angle equals. If all three of these angles add up to equal 180, and these two angles, because they're on a straight line, add up to equal 180. That means that once I add these two, it's equal to this one. That's called the exterior angle theorem. So we've got 30 plus 10x minus 10 equals 12x minus 4. So once we combine like terms and get the x by itself, x equals 12. If the two triangles are congruent, state the congruent statement. So this one, I check and see do they have matching congruence marks, and they do. The congruence marks are two sides and an angle between it. So that is going to be two s's with an a between it, or side angle side. The congruent statement is that triangle FWX equals YHG. So for this one, as long as the F goes with the Y and the W is in the same spot as the H and the X is in the same spot as the G, there's actually three different ways that you can write that congruent statement. If the two triangles are congruent, when you see that word if, one of the two problems is going to have not congruent, and that's this one. If I fill in the congruence marks here on BC, because it's the side that both triangles share, I get angle, side, side. So you can almost see where I wrote it, and I crossed it out because it spelled a bad word. Now, the fact that it spells a bad word is not the reason why you can't use angle, side, side. However, it does help us remember that you can't use angle, side, side. The angle would have to be angle C and angle B, the little ones, in order for this to work, but because it's H and A, it does not work. So they're not congruent or not enough information. This one I worked out for you guys. The jeweler has this drawing and he wants to increase it by a scale factor of 2. This is at the point 0, 0. I multiply both the x and y value by 2. Anything times 0 is itself, so it remains 0, 0. This is the point 3, 2. 3 times 2 is 6, so I went over 6. 2 times 2 is 4, I went up 4. I marked that corner. That's the point 1, 4. So this becomes the point 2, 8. This is the point negative 2, 2. So it becomes negative 4, positive 4. This one here, determine if they're similar, so give the postulate. I made a point to write on there, this is not a multiple choice question. It is a question with 3 different parts. Still, I ended up with people circling one of those 3 letters. You guys have got to read your instructions. These two are not similar because once I figured out that third angle and wrote it in, I saw that I only have one angle that matches between the 2 triangles, and you need to have at least 3. This one, it gives me only information about the sides. So I lined up on the top the sides of this triangle, 3, 6, 8. Then over here on the bottom, I matched up shortest to longest, 9, 18, 24. And all of them shortened down to 1/3 or reduced down to 1/3. So all 3 sides are proportional, so they are similar by side, side, side. And again, the I matches with the I, H, G, I matches with J, H matches with K, and G matches with L. This one here, I know these are vertical angles, so I could go and fill in the 40. Using subtraction, I got that this angle equals 80. So we've got 2 matches, 40 and 80, on both triangles. That means they are similar to each other by angle-angle similarity. We have a flagpole that casts a shadow, so I drew the flagpole in the shadow. Alright, and then we've got a 6.2 foot tall girl also casting a shadow. We want to know how long is her shadow. This is just a proportion. You put the corresponding sides stacked on top of each other, so we've got 6.2 over 42.9 equals some unknown over 253.1. Please excuse my dog noises in the background. My big, huge animals are playing with each other. So once I cross multiply and solve, I get that her shadow is 36.6 feet long. And the last page was really, I sent out the text message the night before. It says name 3 ways to show the quadrilateral as a parallelogram. There's actually 6 ways. If 2 pair of opposite sides are parallel, 2 pair of opposite sides are congruent, 1 pair of opposite sides are both parallel and congruent. Okay, if opposite angles are congruent, diagonals bisect each other, and if adjacent angles are supplementary. All of those are different ways to show that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Having 4 sides makes it a quadrilateral, not necessarily a parallelogram. Name 1 way that you would know a parallelogram is a rhombus. So if it's a parallelogram and all 4 sides are congruent, it's a rhombus. If the diagonals are perpendicular, that's also indicative of it being a rhombus. The rhombus is the only shape that has those 2 things. That's a parallelogram. Alright, so name 1 way you know a parallelogram is a rectangle. If all 4 angles of the parallelogram are 90 degrees, and if the diagonals are congruent. Those are the things that make it a rectangle. Now you only need to know 1 of either one of these, and you need to know 3 out of the 6 of those. And then using a compass and a straight edge, construct 1 of the following. So a lot of you guys tried all 3, and as long as you got 1 of them right, I took it. So what I did here is I drew a segment. I put the point of the compass on this end and opened it past middle and swung it up and made a mark. Put the point of the compass on this end without changing the width and made a mark, and then connected that cross section with here, and it became a perpendicular bisector. This one I started with this large angle, and I swung an arc through it, and I put the point where the arc and the angle intersect and made another mark. Without changing that width, I moved the point over here to make a mark, and then I connected the intersection of that mark to the vertex of the angle, making 2 congruent angles. And last but not least, with the circle, I marked the center, put the point of the compass on the center, and created a circle. Once I did that, I used my straight edge to create a diagonal. From the diagonal, from this diagonal, I created the perpendicular bisector from it. So I used, from this end, swung and made an arc. I put the point on this end and made another little arc, and then connected that. And that makes 2 congruent and also perpendicular marks, which congruent diagonals makes it a rectangle, perpendicular diagonals makes it a rhombus. And a square is a mixture of a rhombus and a rectangle. When you connect the ends of those two diameters of the circle, you create a square that's inscribed in a circle.